272.
I think everybody might have heard that. So 172, which will be shortly, as a song of encouragement. First off, I got a little excerpt I'd like to read to you. I don't know who actually penned it. I know where it came from, and about the time, I think it's somewhere around 2021 that this take place. But I want you to, some of you may already know it, but anyway, I want you to hear it. Savannah Leffler, that's this young lady, that's her name, a senior and valedictorian at the John Glenn High School in Michigan, recently submitted a draft for an honors night speech, which contained language criticizing other philosophies and assertions. She made the statement, the purpose in her speech, she made the statement that the purpose of life is to live a life devoted to Christ. She's in a college and said that. The principal, Michael Weger, and he was the guy, he's always writing about how diverse their school was. You know, we are a very diverse school, and this, that, and the other. Here's what he said about that. With this said, we do need to see a revision that sticks to a non-secular approach. This is a quote from him. I am not opposed to thanking God for the great honor bestowed upon you, but we cannot take the approach that is currently laid out in your speech. Now, what do you think about that? You see what kind of state our school system has gotten into? But there's light at the end of the tunnel. And this just shows you how our free speech has gotten to be in these days, you know, and what's happened to it. But as I said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. The Tennessee lawmakers that just completed their sessions, you know, their thing. It's just coming up, being finished. They have passed a law, and in that law, it says that the public schools can now host the 10 Commandments in their schools. That's a biggie. Not only the 10 Commandments, but the Constitution. And then the preamble and all that stuff that they had when I was going to school, hang on the wall. Man, that's great news. I'm glad to hear that. Anyway, I thought that was, you know, something interesting in what's going on. Like I said, that particular incident happened several years ago, but I don't know if that school is probably still got the same philosophy. But anyway, that's what's being taught in our schools today. Nevertheless. In Matthew 8:23, a leper came to him and bowed down before him and said, Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. You know what's different about that? We got people running around over the country today saying that they can heal people too. And I watched on TV, they'll go around, they'll put their hands on them, you know, and shove them forward and be healed. And nothing happens. And they'll say, well, it's going to take time. You know, you want to take time. When Jesus healed somebody, it didn't take no time. It came in effect immediately. Leprosy was a terrible disease, and it still is. I think it's still a disease, but not very common because of the way that we live these days. But when that happened to a person, that was just about lights out. I mean, that was the way it was. And it was even, they couldn't even associate with people. But here's this one that had leprosy. And he said, if you're willing, he talking to Jesus, if you're willing, you can heal me. And he did. Jesus is not only willing to do that, he's been willing to do a great deal. He was willing to leave glory on heaven and come to this earth and live as a man. In Philippians 2, verses 6 through 8, he says, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant and being made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself to become an obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. You know, that is a lot of willpower to do something like that. Jesus was in the form of God. Think about that. He was God in the form of God. He was just like God. They were just alike. But he emptied himself of that. He let that go so he could come and be like a man, like us, and be tempted, and and he was he was willing to be humiliated and ridiculed wherever he went. He was willing to do that. He was willing to come here, and he was willing to live the life he did in order to be ridiculed and talked about and made fun of. He was despised and forsaken of man, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hid their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. That's from Isaiah 53, verse 3. And, he was despised. The people that he came to save despised him, and they wouldn't have anything to do with him. And every time they could do something against him, they would do it. And he put up with it. He was willing to put up with that. He was a willing person. He was very willing. He starts off with being the will to come here to begin with. And then after he was here, he was willing to suffer the things that he suffered in order to be a good high priest, if you please, what it wound up to be. Man had become so corrupt, there's no hope for mankind except that he died for his deeds. And men should have died for their transgressions, as Christ was willing to come here and live as a man and die in our place. All of us. When you disobey God, the ordinances or His commandments, the sentence is death. That's what it was. It was death. But here's a man that came here and lived and was willing to go through what he did, even die on the cross for our sins. He carried them all the sins of the world on that cross. Isaiah 53:12 says, "Therefore I allot him a portion with the great, and he will provide the booty with the strong, because he poured him out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sins of many and interceded for the transgressors." He was willing not only to do that, but he was willing to intercede for all those that transgress the law. He's interceding for us today, and he would intercede for whoever. He was willing to suffer many, many things. He was a very willing person. He was an humble person, and he was a very where no guile was found in his mouth. Now the question is posed to us: are we willing? He was willing to do all these things for us. Are we willing to do anything for him? Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Matthew 6:24. Are we willing to do that today? Are we ourselves willing to follow his teachings and his commandments? Too many people are too self-centered about themselves and won't deny themselves anything to follow Jesus. They won't deny nothing. They're not going to. He denied everything. He gave away Godhead, just like God. He was as God, and he gave that up to come here. Are we willing to give up anything for him? It's hard to find people in this world that's willing to give up anything for Christ. You look at society in general. I mean, people have gotten so corrupt again that it's kind of getting like it was in the days of Noah. Everywhere you look, they're giving this stuff and everything that's against God, they're for it. And if it's for God, then it's wrong. Everything that's against. It's a pitiful situation that we've gotten ourselves into as a world. We need to consider the Apostle Paul. Paul, all that he had went through. He was stoned and considered dead. He was persecuted by his own countrymen. The Jews had tried to kill him. He was shipwrecked. He was put in jail, and he was still willing to suffer for Christ. I mean, that wasn't enough suffering. He was still willing to suffer more. And, here's the world today. They ain't willing to suffer for nothing. In Galatians 2:20 says, "I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loves me and gave himself up for me." Jesus was willing to give himself up for a person like that. And, we got people in the world today, and I've had it said to me, why I can't never be forgiven for the things that I've done. Well, people, I've heard it, I've had it said to me. But people can be forgiven for some of the most awesome sins that the world has ever known. Can we make the statement that Christ is living in us? And we're willing to love one another as he loved us? Are we willing to love others like ourselves? When Jesus was asked the great commandment, he said this. He said to love God, and the second one, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Do we really love our neighbor? Or for that matter, do we love anybody as ourselves? I speak as a general world situation. I know Christians, they love each other, and they love themselves, and they love one another, and would do about anything for one another. But you've got a multitude of world people running around here that they don't love themselves. They shooting and killing each other every minute, every day, just about every day. You turn the news on, and someone has shot 2 or 3 and killed them, run over with a car, and kept running, kill them. I mean, it's a pitiful situation. They don't love one another. They don't even love themselves. If they did, they wouldn't do that thing. You take these people that they run out here and they'll shoot 3 or 4 people, and the law gets after them and turn and shoot yourself. Now that's real smart. I mean, you can't change your mind about anything then. It is a mess. It's like the old boy that jumps out of the tower and about halfway down, he decides I really shouldn't have done this. And that's what people, they're in bad shape. And we need to try our best to make them understand that that's really not the way that man should be. Jesus admonishes us that we should be that type of a person, that we should love one another. And I'm talking general terms here again. I know Christian people surely do. If they don't, they'll be in that same group that when they are called up to give an account also. But do we really love ourselves and love our neighbors and look after those that we come into contact with from time to time? Jesus, he was willing to heal this leper. I mean, how much are we willing to do for someone, that's not a Christian, that's someone that's lost out here in the world, that's running loose and don't have enough thought about Jesus and God to even visit a church building? How many people we know like that? Revelation 22:17, and the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let him that heareth say, come. And let him that is athirst come. And whosoever will, let him take of the water of life freely. The key to that is whosoever will. Whosoever will. It's easy to say all this stuff, but whosoever will. Who's going to do it? Who is going to be able to do it? Whosoever will. That was one of that is used several times throughout the scriptures. Whosoever will, come unto me. Whosoever will. Are you willing? I'm sure we are. We wouldn't be here tonight. We're willing to come to Jesus and try to live a life that he'd have us to live. But look at around you, all the people. I mean, this is pitiful. The people that you see every day, hundreds of them, they're absolutely not willing to live a life to Jesus. They live their life to themselves and what they can get out of it at the moment. We may have been that way one time, The apostle said to the Gentiles, you were like this one time, but you've been cleansed. You're free now. You've been sanctified. Well, that's what we're supposed to be here in this realm that we live in, Christian people. And I hope that this may have helped some understand and know that that's the way we live. I hope you got something out of it. I kind of did a little bit as I went through it. It's interesting sometimes to read about Jesus and what he did and why he did. We forget the fact of why he did. Sometimes we just read over that He came to the world and he did this and he did that, and then we kind of forget, you know, when we come here to this communion, we just sometimes we get to the point that it's just a tradition, like the Pharisees. It's not a tradition. It's something that's really important, and it's something that needs to be criticized. That we're thinking about someone that died for us, hung on a tree, hung up on a tree, and nailed to it, not just tied there, nailed to it. Pitiful, painful death that he died for us. And are we willing to do anything for him? I hope so. If you're in the audience that need the gospel or our prayers or anything that we can do for you, let it be known as we sing this song that was.
I have decided.